There was a philosopher called Chang Tzu in China. The Taoist philosopher had an idea that perhaps he was a butterfly dreaming he was a man, or a man dreaming he was a butterfly. The idea is that reality is something that is not intrinsically certain. We can't really be sure that we are experiencing it. Descartes later came up with cogito ergo sum, I think and therefore I am. Somebody later added cogito ergo sum, I think that I think and therefore I think that I am. Now, the different thing about this with our modern life is that virtual reality has gone from rubbish to very, very good. And I was recently at Barcelona's Mobile World Congress where I saw all manner of executives dressed in their lovely suits, wearing enormous goggles, which will later shrink to much smaller, doing all sorts of funny things. So they were fighting, they were dancing, and yes, some of them were even enjoying themselves in other ways. Now, the funny thing about this is that virtual reality has been so quickly built upon, perhaps out of Moore's law that already it's slowing down, but perhaps out of the tech boom and the massive incentive for it, that we really haven't thought about the consequences in enough depth. Now, there is an experiment in philosophy, my degree, where they ask the question, if you actually had the opportunity, the matrix, blue pill, red pill, to choose to either go to sleep in a machine and not remember anything of your past life, but to therefore live out a life in virtual reality that was perfect. Everything you wanted to do was there, everything that you thought would be perfect was there, and everything that your mind would possibly desire based on your physiology and your genetics was fine-tuned so that your life was perfect based on criteria that you may decide yourself, may be decided by science and psychologists. Would you do that? Or the alternative, to live on as you are already doing through the Buddhist philosophy of life is to suffer. There is a cycle, and therefore you will at some point have your hopes dashed, your fears realized, and eventually the majority of people that you will ever love, ever meet, will die, either before you and of course after you have died yourself. This is the reality of the human condition. It's something that we've had since we were little, tiny animals living in the water and a long time ago. Now, the thing about this is that virtual reality is something that has given us the potential to allow our minds to break loose from this. Now, some people could argue that it's fiction, and perhaps even religion in some cases has allowed us to do the same thing. However, the interface has changed. Already, people are moving from experiencing the reality around them. Here I am, there's nobody around. I'm in the middle of absolute nowhere in a beautiful waterfall. Took me a while to find it, driving up here, walking out here. And the point about it is it's very much the real world. There's no political dogma, there's no capitalist marketing, there's nothing here, there's nobody here. This is very much, from my perspective, reality. However, to make myself happy here, how would I do that? Maybe I could have a little dance. Maybe I could have a little sing. And the fact is, I can make myself happy in this environment. I'm happy just by being here. However, most people, the majority of people, myself included, how do we get happy generally? How do we live our lives? By proxy, through a device. How much time do you spend on your mobile phone? If the reports that I saw at the World Congress were right, it's a large amount of your time and increasing exponentially. So, if you have a moment, maybe on the loo, maybe on the train, maybe even in the car, you have your phone. You want to check who's contacting you. Social connections have always been the most important thing for the human mind. Primates as we are a social altruistic being. Now, the thing about this is that now our social desire to connect, to be in touch, is marketed to us and sold to us, and our social desires are leading us to not talk to other people, new people, to meet, not to build firm, established communities, but to connect with a few people whom we already feel secure with. If we're in a situation where we don't know people, for example in public, out comes the phone, we're talking to somebody that we've known for a long time, instead of looking and talking with the people around us. If we're looking for interesting, beautiful places, we're not going out to the countryside, we're not going out even to the city to find somewhere beautiful. We're looking at photographs on 500px or another website like that. Our lives are lived by proxy through a screen. We're trying to experience reality through somebody else's experience of reality, and that can never be, as Andy Warhol showed with his own art, his copies of art, it can never be the same as the real thing. You've gone to the Louvre and you've seen some of the Impressionist paintings in the flesh, so it where you really can experience them in a very different way than you can if you look on Google Images. Our experience of reality needs to be something that is first-hand, because by being first-hand, it is being interpreted through 100% through our own senses. Otherwise, it's the equivalent of an analog record. Analog record comes in, and you burn it, you scratch it straight into the vinyl. Now, digital. So what you do is you take that and you take little bits and it's going through a sample rate. If I'm taking a photograph here, you're not seeing this waterfall through your eyes, you're seeing it through the camera's software, you're seeing it through the processing that I put on, the viewpoint that I've chosen. The reality is filtered through technology, it's filtered through somebody else's perspective. Reality needs to be first and foremost something that you experience for yourself. Virtual reality is intrinsically something that somebody else has created based on their own ideas of what you would like and you would respond best to. And one of the things that people really understand, as Aldous Huxley said, is that man has an infinite capacity for distraction. If you look, people have got their phones, it's not the works of Shakespeare that they're looking at or the most amazing symphonies of Beethoven. It is generally the lowest thing. It's things that are in the moment. We spend a lot of time, Will Durant, on the last 24 hours as opposed to the last 4,000 years, for example, last 6,000 years. History has this expanse of knowledge, philosophy, ideas, art to benefit us, and yet we're very interested in what is happening tomorrow and the concerns of the moment, because that is what somebody can sell us, that is what somebody can actually keep us hooked on, like a drug. That dopamine spike, that dripping that addicts us to our smartphones. A young teenage girl will have the same physiological reaction in her brain as a young mother would have hearing her child cry. It has got to the stage where we are physically addicted to the internet because of that instant stimulation, that novelty that if I'm wandering around here, nothing is changing very much. Everything is fairly similar. Maybe there's an animal roaming around somewhere, not so many. There's very little novelty, whereas novelty now, because of the sheer connectedness and the population is now almost 7 billion people, the novelty is increasing, as Terence McKenna said, at such a rate that it has to be filtered down for others. And therefore, when you're choosing your own reality, it's difficult to understand which reality is yours and which one has already been fed through to you, like a dog choosing between certain dog foods that have already been decided for it. The point about this is that if you have the opportunity, the red pill or the blue pill, to dive into virtual reality or to live in the real world, it's not really that dichotomy. It's literally you have to meet sort of in the middle, but be aware of the difference between the two. At the end, what you have to realize is that reality is anything that you experience. You're experiencing reality now when you watch this. But the screen in front of you is just pixels. This is just pixels on a screen. This is just noise in a microphone. There's a less important sense of reality in what you're looking at the moment. If you can get an idea and make it your own, then this video will have served its purpose. But it has to be chewed. It has to be made your own. Too often we look at facts We take them, we write them down in a commonplace book or note them down on our phone, save them in our favorites, and believe that we've understood them. We haven't. We've saved them, and that's it. Favorite and forget. Your mind is something that is like a wild bull, and it's being led astray by people who would benefit from your dopamine addicted, erratic behavior. It's all the same thing. Now, at the show, this virtual reality, the goggles were quite big. They had things so you could even feel temperature, roller coasters and so on. The interface is getting better, and it's getting more convincing. This is in full HD, but 4K, 8K, 6K, already on the way. The interfaces are catching up. And while it makes a greater mimesis, a greater representation of reality, it is still not anything like the real thing. Be careful when you're looking at your phone, checking on Instagram, looking at faces you might see, listening to people who you might find interesting, talking to friends via the medium of text as opposed to face with the 80% of non-verbal communication that's really important. All of these things that the smartphones and modern technology offers us only an increasingly less obvious version of an illusion. The illusion is becoming so compelling that people would literally spend hours playing video games. I've heard that there's one person in Asia who was so addicted to video games, and his own child died from neglect. When you have the amount of raw data and the ability to process it that companies now have, they know what you want more precisely than you do, and they'll give it to you. And your brain doesn't have the ability to say no, to draw limits, to understand what's best for it. Like a goldfish, you're eating too much, you're consuming too much, and it's killing you. Time is your life. The moments you've wasted in this video, you could have spent in reality. Time itself is the medium that is being taken from you. Time itself is your life. You can choose to spend it in reality by watching a lesser version of reality, or you can find your own reality and make it your own. You can make it vivid. Instead of watching something, you can do something. Instead of looking at photographs, you can be taking photographs. Instead of watching videos, you can be making videos. Because by creating, we stamp history. As Taylor said in Metaphysics, the idea is that creation itself is the human quality that separates us from the animals. The ability to make something that has never existed before, and if it wasn't for an action that we can do, would never have existed at all. Creation isn't something that you do when you're liking a photograph on Instagram. Creation is something that you do when you're producing something from your own personal perspective. And people will tell you that your perspective needs to be improved. Your photography skills could be better. Your video editing skills can be better. Your writing skills can be better. Because you're comparing yourself with 7 million people. Whatever you do is always best because it is perfectly you. It can't not be. By creating something, you are expressing yourself. You're living. You're creating a reality. And that, apart from the virtual reality, is something that really will last, will make history. Life is not measured in years. It's measured in moments, experiences. If I'd spent the day looking at a grey wall, that would be a life wasted, a day wasted. It's the experiences of reality that we'll remember. The experiences of reality that aren't quantifiable, How can I say what I've done? But they are something that will have merit and that will build you. And later on, however beautiful, however precise the representations of it may become, you have to realize that it's yourself, your perspective, that makes it real, not the interface or the quality of the representation that matters. Apparently so. Apparently so. That's apparently so. Like, even my perspective here doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. I'm just a fucking animal. I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear, but I'm just an animal here in a waterfall, talking for no reason at a camera. Why? How are we being incentivized? The power of incentives, Charlie Munger, is a very powerful force, a very, very powerful force indeed. How are you being incentivized? Where is your time being spent? That's your most valuable asset. Spend it wisely.